What is going on, everybody? We are finally in our very first week of really important tournament results for Space-Time Smackdown. So I want to go over the meta share. What are the new best decks that you should be playing or you should be looking to counter? We're mostly going to be looking at the Ursa Day Pocket Weekly. There were a bunch of other small tournaments that went on, but the Ursa Day Pocket Weekly is just a really great overview and kind of almost gives us the full story of what's happening in this meta. So let's head over and take a look at what's going on in the metagame. It seems like Darkrai Magnezone, with its 60% win percentage overall, is pretty insane. Like, this is by far right now the best performing deck. And if we go over and take a look at the standings here, you're going to see that that is absolutely the case. The top 5 decks, 4 of them are Darkrai Magnezone. That's insane. Darkrai Magnezone is way overperforming. So let's go over, let's take a look at how people are playing this deck. We have the 2 Druddigon, the 2 Darkrai, and then the 2/2/2 Magnezone split. That's all of your Pokemon. The idea of this deck is you leave Druddigon in the active spot. He is able to deal rough skin damage if your opponent starts attacking into it. You're able to attach the Darkrai if you want to ping the active Pokemon as well while you're setting up that Magnezone. This is a dark-only energy deck, by the way. Magneton is going to get you all the electric energy you need. Magnezone only needs the 1 to attack. Ideally, you want to charge with Magneton two times, maybe 3 times before you even evolve him. So the Magnezone is just ready to go attack multiple times. And Magnezone does 110 HP. You discard a Lightning Energy, has 140 HP. With the Giant Cape, you're going to boost that to 160. Pretty good number. And with the Darkrai, you can be doing 130 damage in 1 turn. But with the Druddigon and the Darkrai on your bench while you're setting up, you are able to build damage on the active spot to make it so once that Magnezone comes in, it's going to clean up the KO. Now, here's what I like, right? Magnezone is doing very well. If you look at its matchups against some of the top decks, it seems to have about a 55 to 60% matchup against most of them. Other decks, it's like 45 to 50%. It seems to have a very good matchup spread. The thing is that I don't see anything here as being overly oppressive. The deck caps out at 130 damage in 1 turn. Obviously, with the Druddigon, if you have to attack into the Druddigon, you're going to be taking 20 damage, and then your opponent can essentially deal 150 in 1 turn. That's going to knock out most things. But everything here, it's not like they have a bunch of HP. It's not like they're doing a ton of damage. It's not like they're really fast. I can see this deck. I can see players building their decks in a way that can counter this one. I don't think that this is the end-all be-all. This is going to be the #1 deck. It's going to have a 60% win percentage for the rest of the format. I think that right now it's very good while players are not directly trying to tech around it. But I think in the future, I'm not seeing anything here that's saying I can't build my deck in a way that's going to give me a better Magnezone Darkrai variant. If you take a look at something like Gyarados in my mind was the big gatekeeper of the format. You would run into Gyarados a lot, and the only real counterplay to Gyarados was to play a bench sniping Pokemon, something that would let you damage that Gyarados before it ever came into the active spot. The only decks that could do that were Fighting and Electric. Once those decks started to rise up in popularity more, Gyarados fell a little bit, but still, that was it. That was it. If you didn't play a deck that was either doing 180 damage with 1 attack or had some sort of bench sniping Pokemon, you were done against Gyarados. Gyarados took a 70% matchup against you, and that was the way it was. So I don't see that happening with this deck. This deck isn't really taking 70% matchups against anything. It's taking slightly to moderately favored matchups against a lot of decks, but I just think that once we start building around it, we will see Darkrai Magnezone stop being so oppressive. I'm just very optimistic about this format. Now let's take a look at the second best deck. I guess it's the most played, but it's not converting as well as Darkrai Magnezone. That is Palkia and Manaphy with Vaporeon. And it seems like people are opting to play no what do you call it? No Articunos, no other water attackers, really, just the Palkias. All we are relying on are the Palkias. And I like it. I like it. This deck is insanely powerful. It does struggle against the Darkrai Magnezone matchup just a little bit. It's not like you're taking a 30% matchup to it. The reason for that is we're now playing the Giant Cape in Palkia. I think that's very smart. Palkia getting boosted up to 170 HP makes him huge. Giant Cape on the Manaphy, giving it 70 HP instead, is very, very good. When you're playing against Magnezone, they are able to do 150 damage to the Palkia if they are able to do the Darkrai ping plus just a regular Magnezone attack. Now, with the Giant Cape, you're living with 20 HP left. That can be a problem later in the game if you retreat that Palkia out and your opponent is able to go, all right, Cyrus that Palkia back up, attach a Dark Energy to Palkia, and it will knock it out that way. And then they get a free Magnezone swing into anything else. My immediate thoughts is that, hey, if the Darkrai Magnezone matchup isn't going that well, again, it's not like Darkrai Magnezone is that fast. You can probably outspeed them. You can use Manaphy to power up to Palkia. You can then put a Giant Cape on the Palkia. Maybe you lose your first Palkia to a Magnezone, but are they really going to set up 2 Magnezone in the time it takes you to set up 2 Palkia? Most likely not. The instant thing I think of is that, okay, well, if that is our problem, that play of our opponent swinging into a Palkia and using Cyrus and bringing it back up and pinging it with the Dark Energy, knocking it out, why don't we just add some potions in here? This is all spitballing, theory crafting. But again, just to say, Darkrai Magnezone is performing the best right now, but I feel like there's counterplay to it. I think we can change things about our deck to make that matchup just that little bit more favorable. So Palkia Manaphy has been doing very, very well. It's a solid pick in this meta if you want to run it. It's not converting as well as Darkrai Magnezone, but it is still up there at the top tables. It's doing fine. Great deck if this is what you want to solo. This is what you want to spec into for the Space-Time Smackdown format. I say go for it. And now the third most played deck of the format is an old favorite returning, Charizard. This makes sense to me. As I've been playing more with these cards, I've come to realize that communication is best in decks that play low Pokemon count and have a stage 2 or some sort of evolution line. The Pokemon communication just smooths things over for you. If you've been a longtime Charizard player like I can, you know that you will see a lot of hands that look like Charmander on the bench, double Charizard EX in hand. I need the Charmeleon, man. With this little Pokemon, you're able to communication away the Charizard EX, and you'll have a pretty high % chance of finding that Charmeleon. It's just a consistency boost. Charizard really benefits from the communication, as well as people are not playing a lot of Mew. You'll see if you go and you dive through every single deck list in this format, you'll see there's not a lot of Mew going around. That's because of Giant Cape. Mew got a lot worse from Giant Cape. It's no longer really running into Mewtwo EXs. Palkia EXs are running Giant Capes themselves, so if you go up with Mew with against a Palkia with a Giant Cape, you're not one-shotting it. It's gonna survive the hit. So Mew just has a lot lower value. Really, the only thing he can consistently get through is a Charizard EX, and this deck isn't quite performing well enough for me to say, hey, everyone put a Mew EX in your deck. It's doing well, but it's not that well. It's not the #1 deck in the format. But Charizard is now just faster than ever before, and the general rule of, hey, if you're able to set up a Charizard with 5 energy, you're probably just winning the game. It still stands. It's Charizard EX, man. You're doing 200 damage turn after turn. He's going to get the knockouts that you want and just close up the game. 180 HP. There's really nothing that can get through him in just one attack. Even if a Palkia attacks and knocks out your Moltres, well, you're able to potion that Charizard, remove that 20 damage, and keep swinging. Get back up to full HP. You're fine. So yeah, I really like Charizard in this meta. Again, it's just more consistent. It's always been my fear. If Charizard gets more consistent, what's going to happen to the game? But it seems like even though he's gotten more consistent, other cards have come in to balance him out. He's not too oppressive, so very happy about that. Yeah, Charizard EX, another solid pick. Something most of you guys can probably build right now and have a very scary meta threat going forward. All right, we've got to talk about Weavile Darkrai, and not for good reasons. Weavile Darkrai was the assumed best new deck going forward. And it is kind of fizzled out. It's still putting up placements, but its conversion rate to like top performances, it's just getting beat out by Darkrai Magnezone in every single category. Conversion, placements, everything. Darkrai Magnezone seems to be the better Darkrai deck, and that I'm very happy about. Darkrai Weavile is a incredibly annoying deck. If they get off to a fast start, Weavile is able to start doing 90 damage on their second turn of the game. If you're playing something a little bit slower, something that needs to evolve, something that isn't just playing some big wall to sit in the active spot, you're not having a good time. Weavile is going to run you off the board before you can usually get set up. And that's very, very limiting to the format by not allowing us to try out these decks that are just that bit slower, but their late game is so much better than any of these other decks in the format and have a real chance to compete in the meta. So I'm happy to see that Weavile Darkrai is not doing as well, because it was very, very oppressive. It made smaller HP decks harder to justify playing. So very happy to see Weavile Darkrai on the downtrend. Just want to give you guys that quick update. Looks like some of the better variants are going for the Spiritomb, not the Farfetch version, and they're playing a Giant Cape instead of a Rocky Helmet. Heavy on the Gust. The Spiritomb combos well with the Cyrus Gust. But yeah, this is essentially what we're looking at for Weavile Darkrai. If you want to play a Darkrai deck, probably just play Darkrai Magnezone for right now. It doesn't seem like Weavile is going to be the #1 deck like we thought. Again, just very happy to see, because it was a little bit toxic when they got that early start and were oppressing all of my fun decks I was trying to play. Okay, very quickly, I just want to talk about 2 more decks from last format that seem to be doing fine in this one. They didn't really gain any outright new cards that helped them out too much, but they both have things going for them that make them a little bit better position. Executor Celebi, Darkrai has grass weakness, so it is a little bit better for them. Executor will be hitting for 60 guaranteed, maybe 100 on the Darkrai. You're going to be able to likely 2-shot it if you get just 1 Tropical Swing Head. So things are looking good for Executor Celebi. It's not performing the best in the world, but it's still getting these like top placements. It's doing fine. And then we have Gyarados Greninja. Gyarados Greninja benefited from the fact that there are not a lot of bench sniping attacks going around, which was Gyarados' biggest problem. It does have some other things going against it, like there are now bigger attackers that can deal more damage to the Gyarados and make a follow-up attack to knock it out easier. So it's in a weird spot. It's still good, still very good. It doesn't lose. People are not playing the outright counter to it anymore with the Hitmonlees or the Zebstrikas. So not performing quite as well as it used to last format, but it's still around. It's still something you got to consider when you're entering these tournaments. Okay, now it's time to talk about some of the wackier decks, the things on the fringe of the meta that are putting up good placements. I can't believe this. I can't believe this, because we joked around a lot about, in my Discord, about what Pokemon is going to be the new, 2 EX 18 trainers. And I don't think anyone said Pachirisu, okay? Everyone was on like, oh, Dialga, obviously, right? Dialga accelerates to itself. It's got a lot of HP. But no, the best 2 Pokemon 18 trainer deck we are seeing is the Pachirisu. I get it. Pachirisu aims to do the same thing that like Weavile Darkrai does, where it's just going to spit a lot of damage out at you way faster than anything else can. With this deck, and you're playing all these tool cards, you're able to get that Pachirisu swinging for 80 damage almost always on your second turn of the game. That's tough. That's really tough for some decks to deal with. It has lightning type, so it's going to have that type advantage against the Palkia decks. So it's just going to be hitting those even harder. And then you just get to pick whatever tool you want. I mean, likely the first Pachirisu is going to need whatever tool you can find first. But then that second one, you're going to be able to decide if you want to do the Giant Cape or the Rocky Helmet. So when your opponent's swinging into it, they're taking more damage, and you're boosting Pachirisu's effective damage every single turn. So, I mean, there's not much more to say about this deck, right? It's Pachirisu. You put Pachirisu in the active spot, and you play whatever trainers you find on the turn to lead you to victory. But just got to let you guys know, this is the new EX plus 18 trainers deck. It seems like Pachirisu is the best one, and honestly, the best one we've seen. Articuno was very gimmicky. Articuno fell off if you weren't able to hit your Misties, but this one, Pachirisu is going to do what Pachirisu wants to basically every single game. A fourth of your deck are the damage enhancers for Pachirisu, so you're going to have a pretty easy time finding those. Yeah, Pachirisu, very funny deck. All you need are the 2 EXs to play it, and then get your hands on the new tools from the set, and you're good. Can't believe it. What's his name? Where's Sajan at? I better see Sajan on Pokemon Pocket running this deck, man. This might even be him. This might even be him that ran this deck. Yeah. So go give it a try, I guess, if you wanna, if you need a low to the ground deck to build for this new format. Next up, we have the Yanmega decks. Yanmega is pretty decent because he does 140 damage to Darkrai's and Weaviles. Again, Weavile isn't looking to be a big problem anymore, but Darkrai, yes. So Yanmega is going to do that 140 damage. If it can get a Darkrai in the active spot, if that Darkrai doesn't have a cape, it's gone. If they do have a cape, you're going to hope that you had already set up some damage previously with Dialga, with that Metallic Turbo or whatever to get that that final KO on it. This is one of the few decks that is playing a Mew, and this makes sense to me because Mew, you are not really dedicating any normal attachments to. You're just using the Dialga to power it up at the same time as the Yanmega. It's just another option for you, right? And I don't see a problem with that because Mew, again, can be doing 150 damage to a Palkia. Even if they have a cape on it, that's still good damage. The rest of the deck, I mean, it's a very low to the ground. There's not a lot of Pokemon here. It's just a lot of trainer cards. You know, you got the Cyrus and the Leaf and the Sabrina, all this supporting cast to make it as easy as possible for you to do your game plan of just power up Yanmega and Mew and get swinging and hopefully win the game that way. A lot of big EXs here. Going to be tough to knock out unless your opponent's playing Palkia again. So yeah, I mean, it's a fine deck. Let's take a look at the other version of Yanmega, and that's with Exeggutor. Exeggutor is just a fantastic wall. I've talked about Exeggutor so much on this channel and how much I love him. He is one of the best Pokemon if you go first. You're just able to evolve right up into him. Then you got 160 HP EX. Potentially swinging for 80 every single turn. The grass weakness, again, just good because there's some dark stuff going around that's weak to grass. And then Yanmega is just a good closing attacker. He is doing 120 HP, 120 damage, guaranteed. That's very, very good. Exeggutor always wants something that does consistent damage, and the Yanmega is a pretty good attacker to it. You're able to attach to the Yanma/Yanmega while you're swinging with the Exeggutor because the guy only needs one energy. So, cool deck, just sort of here as a counter meta deck. Yeah, not much more to say about it. Just a straight counter meta pick. It totally depends on, you know, what else is going on in the format. How many Darkrai's are you going to run into? Because that is likely this deck's best matchup, and I'm sure it can start to get a little bit rough against some of the other things. But the Exeggutor with 160 HP and the Erica support makes it hard for really any deck to get through. And they're opting for Rocky Helmets and not Giant Capes. I guess we don't need 180 HP Exeggutor. You know, the more I played Exeggutor myself, the Giant Capes didn't feel that great. It felt like the Giant Cape was only ever relevant when I played Shaman in the deck as well and could heal either 10 or 20 damage from the Exeggutor as well, and Erica in the same turn. Kind of a lot to pull off, but Rocky Helmet, you're just boosting the damage, and that's even better because Yanmega, while hitting for 120 is a very good number, it falls short of a lot of knockouts. So if you put a Rocky Helmet on the Exeggutor, get a Tropical Swing in, they swing, they take Rocky Helmet damage, knock out the Exeggutor. Now that Pokemon is adequately softened up for Yanmega to come in and clean it up. So I'm a fan of the deck. Again, just not like the best performing thing in the world, but it's here in the meta. It is putting up results, so it is something to consider. I think if you picked it up and played it, you would do just fine if you know how to pilot it adequately. Okay, now we get to take a look at Rampardos Lucario. Now, when I was building this deck, I was running into a lot of Weavile in my testing. And when I was running into Weavile, I was like, Lucario is such a waste of space. I mean, if I start the Riolu, it's just getting knocked out turn one. I have no follow-up. I'm not getting set up quick enough. But with Weavile falling a little bit out of favor and us having the time to set up both Lucario and Rampardos on the bench, because just decks are not quite as fast as I thought they would be forced to be, with considering Weavile would be this super oppressive thing. I like the Lucario build now. So Rampardos is just going to be able to one-shot everything if you get enough Lucarios built up. You do need 2 Lucarios to get through any of the bigger EXs with a Giant Cape, which is unfortunate. It almost makes me... But the thing is that you have the Hitmonchan in the back as well. So if Rampardos goes up and he swings into something and he isn't quite able to get the knockout, number one, he has 150 HP, so your opponent's going to have to stretch a little bit to get that knockout if Rampardos didn't damage himself. If they're able to pull it off, you have the Hitmonchan to clean it up, and hopefully in the time that you've been setting everything up. You've either taken an early knockout with a Hitmonchan. Lucario boosted damage is going to let it hit for 50 or 70 if you high rolled and got 2 Lucario. And then clean up last thing with a Rampardos plus a Hitmonchan attack if necessary. Just seems like a really fun... I love this deck. I love this deck so much. I think Rampardos is positioned decently well. The only thing holding it back is the fact that you are not able to search for that Skull Fossil. You just got to hit it on your own. And that's the problem with fossils, is there's no fossil support. So if you just don't get that Skull Fossil, there's nothing you can do. A Pokeball's not going to save you. A Pokemon Communication isn't going to save you. You just have to find one of those 2 Skull Fossil in order to really start playing the game in any meaningful way, which can slow the deck down. So outside of its own consistency problems, it's a super, super powerful deck. And if it gets up and running, it has the capability to get through really any deck in the meta. And here we have our final Darkrai variant, and our final deck we'll talk about, Darkrai Greninja. This deck just aims to be attacking with Darkrai only. You're going to have the Druddigon to deal damage to your opponent if they attack into you, Greninja to ping with Water Shuriken, and Darkrai to ping with its ability while swinging. You're going to be able to do an effective 120 damage every single turn. You are going to be building up damage into the active spot while your Druddigon's in the active and your Darkrai's on the bench, getting attachments to it. So it seems pretty solid. I'm going to have to run this deck myself because you guys know, I love my Greninja decks. And pinging damage and doing extra damage that I shouldn't outside of attacking is one of my favorite ways to play the Pokemon trading card game. So this deck looks super, super fun to me. I very much enjoy it. You have the 2 Cyrus as well. Cyrus combos the greatest with Greninja. You're able to Greninja ping and Cyrus in the same turn. So super, super powerful Gust. No other decks are going to be able to take advantage of Cyrus quite like Greninja decks are. So hopefully we see a rise in Greninja decks in general, because I really do think that the Greninja Cyrus package is so strong. The deck becomes more consistent with Pokemon Communications. Again, it's able to help you find those missing evolution pieces you need a little bit more consistently. So hopefully we see some more Greninja decks come out of this next week's meta update. But guys, that's gonna be it for the meta update this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hopefully you learned something. You know which decks you should be focusing on now. Let me know in the comments what counter decks you guys are brewing up to this meta. That's gonna be it. Have a nice night, guys.